Welcome back. In this demonstration, we're going to talk about inking our manga portrait. Now, eventually we are going to end up painting our manga portrait here in art class, but if you're at home or somewhere else and you just want to have an inked drawing, this is the part where I'm showing how to ink. Now, back in the US, I would say use a Sharpie. If you want to be fancy and use a dip pen, you could do that too, but I find Sharpies are just nice, very consistent tool. However, I'm teaching in Vietnam this year, so I've got this marker called a TL marker, permanent marker, and then there's a bunch of Vietnamese I can't read. It is an incredible permanent marker. It's got a fine tip on one end, and on the other it's got a very square nib. The only problem with this marker is it is crazy powerful. It bleeds through like crazy. So in my class, I'm going to give you a brown sheet of paper so that while you're drawing and inking your drawing, the pen doesn't bleed through and ruin the tables. Also, it's so crazy powerful that it actually bleeds onto other pieces of paper. You can see this is a student's folder, and he made this little drawing here, and you can kind of see the faint outline of another drawing from a different student who's drew on a different folder and simply placed his folder on top of this folder, and it made the outline. So even after you're done, it kind of continues to bleed out. I don't know what crazy toxic chemical is in here, but it continues to bleed even after you're done. So as we put these away, I think I'll leave them set aside for a couple days so they can kind of bleed out and not ruin other drawings. So as you're starting your inking process, keep those things in mind, but also we are thinking about line, and this is where our line really comes to define our shapes and how big those shapes are. Remember, we talked about thin lines versus thick lines and making sure that sometimes you have thin and thick, and also now we will talk about the implied line where you start a line, lift off your marker a bit, and bring back your line, and you can kind of follow that line with your eye, and it completes the idea here, the completion of that idea, but your mind fills in the lines, and that's an art trick, and this is called implied line. And this is very important as you get a better art to include this. It makes your artwork. It makes your artwork more interesting and more fun to look at. So as we get started, this is the point where you have to be very careful about which lines you're choosing to do. We do not want any of these guidelines. We're going to erase those later. So you want to make sure that you're focusing on the lines you really want to keep. All right, so I'm gonna just get started here with this outside line of the hair, and I'm gonna just leave a little space there. And every time I leave an implied line, I'm just kind of lifting my marker up ever so slightly. All right, now one part is sometimes you want to change things. You see a little better opportunity, and you can take the time to change that with your marker because it's a little easier to say, oh, now I've got a little guide of where I want that to be, and you can kind of estimate or make a new change. Like here, I'm gonna curve that a little bit more. Now, one thing that's very important is making sure that you get your overlapping correct so that by the end your overlapping looks very nice and convincing. All right. Now I just changed a little bit of how that was set up there by changing my line, so you can keep yourself fluid and change those lines if you feel confident in that. If not, that's all right. Then just do whatever it is you feel confident with. All right. So there's my hair. Notice I did not Sharpie the guideline that's back there. We're gonna erase that in just a minute, and we wanna make sure that we don't have those lines Sharpied, because we don't want them there at the end, all right? For this eyebrow, I've got just a line there, but I'm actually gonna change this so it's a little thinner on that side, and I'm gonna bring it down this way and make it just a little bit thicker. And of course, I'm not following my own directions and having my brown piece of paper underneath my artwork. There we are, it's a little better. Now I'm confident that I won't get that ruined, that other drawing underneath there ruined. So here's the Sharpie of my eyebrow line. Now, with the eyes, female eyes tend to be thicker. This top eyelash line tends to be a little thicker. So I'm actually going to just thicken it up a bit. Instead of having one line there, I'm going to make it a thicker line. All right, and I'm going to make this thicker. Now this marker is so powerful, if I leave it on the paper for too long, it just sucks right in. So you have to be very quick with it. Otherwise, it really takes over. Again, I'm going to make this line up here a little thicker, which is actually going to force me to redo my line right there for like the eyelid situation. All right, so you might have to be a little flexible on what you have in and what you don't have in. Now I'm gonna just take my line around this spot and make the spot of shine just a bit bigger. And as I'm coloring this eye piece in, I'm gonna be careful to make sure that my marker doesn't bleed over into my white spots. That's why I'm giving myself just a little bit of extra space there. All right, now we want to make sure we don't do any of those guidelines again. Come back over here and do the shine on this eye. And notice how that shine then is going to run, or the black iris part is going to run right into the eyelash line. Okay, so there's our eyes. I'm going to do this nose like that. I'm going to make this mouth a little different. I'm going to take an angle here so that it's thicker on one side and thinner on the other side. Again, changing the size of my line. Now on my jaw here, I'm going to get the angle in. I'm going to go right past the neck, then I'm going to leave a little gap. And I'm going to leave a little gap and go there. The trick about this implied line, it's just like here in the eye and here in the eye. You need to get the most important part, which is this curve, but this straight line, the eye can make up that difference. You wouldn't want to leave a gap at the chin because that's a very central angle point that you would need in there to make the eye understand what it's needing to understand. But the rest of it can be left out. These little pieces in there, and the mind will fill that in. Last piece here with the ears. Okay, now I've got that pretty well sorted out. So I'm going to take my eraser. Whoops, forgot this little piece down there. And if you forget something, you can always put it back in later. But now that I'm done, I'm going to take my white, very soft vinyl eraser. It's not a latex one, it's a vinyl one, so it's a little softer. And I'm just going to make sure that I erase all these extra lines and press nice and hard to get those out. Now I pressed very hard with my pencil for the purposes of the demonstration, so my lines aren't coming up quite as nicely as I'd like to. They're actually not that bad, but yours, hopefully you pressed lightly like I asked you to, and the lines are coming up more easily for you. All right, and so the concept here that you're getting is the overlapping of the different lines, and how that plays into the overall look of your anime character. You're getting the idea of thinness and thickness of line, So you're playing that into your anime character, and hopefully you're getting the idea of implied line and bringing that into your anime character. So you'll see here I've left out my shoulders because I might later on put back in some kind of dress or clothes there, but you really want to be thinking of the thin versus thick idea, where you can see that here in the eyes, you can see it here in the eyebrows. I've left all of these lines here pretty thin. I could thicken them up, you know, if I took this and made this triangle a little thicker, kind of implying that behind there you can like see through, or making different parts of it thick. You can see here I've got an implied line on my chin and on the neck. I've got an implied line here and here on the eyes. So including those thin and thick marks on your portrait will make it more interesting to the viewer. And that is how to finish your Sharpie marker.